Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's Precious Derek Talk Show. I am going to be waiting for you amazing people to join us. Um, but whilst you join, I shall inform other people that we are live. But thank you so much for joining. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. If you can hear me, please let me know you can hear me loud and clear so that I don't speak to myself. Let me know you can hear me loud and clear on the comment section, or just give me a like somewhere to so I'll know that you can actually hear me. But thank you so much for joining. It's one of those evenings that I'm so excited about because it's a topic that I am so looking forward to talking about, and we're going to be talking about Japa, right? So a lot of people say, "What is Japa?" Just so you know, Japa is now in the dictionary, and you can actually go and Google as well what Japa means, and you will know what it means if you haven't heard it before. But before we go into the show for today, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Precious Derek, and this is Precious Derek Talk Show. And this evening, we're going to be talking about the impact of Japa on children. Okay, impact of Japa on children. And I've got my amazing guest who we're going to be chatting along. It's just going to be a chit chat, so you're free to actually join in the call or drop your message on the comment section, share your experiences and what you think you have seen, you have heard from other people, because it's important to just learn from other people, not just to learn from your own experience. So I would bring up the guests now. My guest is a friend turned sister. She is very beautiful inside and outside. She is one of those people that she's a vibe. That's all I can say. I'm going to bring her on right now. Hello.
Hello, hi Precious, hi everyone.
Uh,
So lovely to be here.
how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm doing all right.
Good, 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 good. So Ochi is here for us to talk about Japa, the impact of Japa on your children, on our children. So we all are immigrants. We are people of color, meaning that, and we are in the UK. I'm in the UK. Oji is in the UK. So we're going to be sharing our experience. We're going to be sharing the things we've seen, we've heard, we've from the passion that we have. So it's not just OG talking, I will be talking as well. The importance. A lot of people say when they get that visa that they want to go abroad, depending on what abroad means to you. And this Japa is not just going abroad, it can be moving from one state to another state, from one
Oh my
city to
God.
another city. So it's important for us to know that Japa is not just entering the plane and going to a different continent or a different part of the world. So, what does that do to you, even as an adult, and what does that do to your children? Before we carry on, I would please encourage everyone, if you're watching right now, to please share this so that people can join in. It is so important because most people you speak to in Nigeria, when you speak to them, most of them have the intention of doing what? Of jackbuying, if there's any English like that. So it's important for people to join in. So share on Facebook, share on YouTube, share to your friends on WhatsApp, share the link to everyone so everyone can join. So Oji, I'm gonna ask you, what's your why the passion about the impact of Japa on children? Where did this passion come from? Why do you like to talk about it? What is it about for you? So we just want to hear from you.
First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. It is such a privilege, I would say. In response to your question, I think where this passion was birthed from is number one, relocating to this country at a very, very young age, and seeing the culture shock or seeing the difference that I experienced, as a teenager at the time. And having my own children now has made me see the difference in upbringing, the difference in parenting structures and styles. So initially, I was thinking, I mean, I grew up in Nigeria for most part of my life, and the way we were brought up then is very, very different from having children now. And so I think I've gone through a process of learning and unlearning, and I'm still on that process. And I can see how difficult it is for me, who has been here for maybe almost over 10 years now. And I can just imagine the difference, or how hard it would be for someone who has moved here and for only 1 year and or maybe 2 years, and then they have kids. So it just bettered that passion in me that, I need to speak more about it. I need to try as much as I can to make sure that people are on the right path concerning parenting children, because when people move, it's not just the parents that are affected, and we can easily be blindsided to how this affects children. So yeah, I just think it just come from my own kids, and also seeing everything that's going on around as well.
So what would you say was the okay? So I'll share mine as well. So for me, right, moving to the UK as someone who hasn't even left the shores of my state in Nigeria was not just a culture shock. So okay, there was a culture shock, but there was also in fact, there was all round shock. So this was someone that everything about me was in one state. I going to another state is more like okay, just going past that state to somewhere else. I've never
Transit.
I didn't travel, I didn't do all of that. So I only just went from my state to the UK, and you can imagine how that was for me. And coming to the UK where I didn't have any brothers, no sister, nobody, no nothing. It was, a lot of times we think about, oh, I'm so excited to go abroad, but we don't really think about, okay, when I get there, okay, what's going to happen? All the community I've built in Nigeria, the friendships and everything I've had in Nigeria. I'm leaving everything there, and I'm going to this place that I don't know anybody, literally nobody. So we don't think about that. We're more of, oh, I'm excited, I'm traveling, everybody's excited for you, which is a blessing, which is a good thing. But the reality is that it's completely different. So that was my experience as well coming to this country, and coming as well as someone who is coming as not just to study but coming into a married person, right? Got married, moved here. So I'm not just studying myself in a new environment. I'm also having to live with someone that I've never lived with before. So it was a different dynamics altogether for me as an adult. But the question I was going to ask is that how did that actually affect you? So when you came into the UK, how did you feel initially? What was your initial feeling, and how did you go about dealing with that feeling that you had?
The initial feeling I had when I moved into the UK, of course, like we said, is the difference in the way people in the UK think. It was very, very different from living as a Nigerian, or, from back home. There was difference in culture, there was difference in learning, because I came in as a student before. So I was going through all these things while still trying to understand my identity and also find my place in this environment. Also, there's the whole talks about, the fact that I feel different. I mean, I was raised in Nigeria for most of my life at the time, and coming to an area where, okay, everybody around me is white and I'm now the new minority. It really did something to my psychic, did something to my thinking and my mentality. The things that growing up in Nigeria, that your parents would say, oh, that's a good girl, that's a good child, that's what a good child should do, they were not necessarily working for me here. So things like, oh, when you're in the midst of people, don't say anything, don't be, don't talk too much, don't be too forward, try and be reserved. It's normal, Nigerian upbringing or Nigerian thinking. And when I came to realize that this thing doesn't necessarily work well, because you will know something and you're not able to speak, and you will think that, oh, this is the right thing to do. And I could see that I was really, really struggling with my personality and my identity in Nigeria, things I found good and right back then, and coming into this society and this community that they think differently. So back home, when someone is smiling at you, they are genuinely smiling. But here, when someone is smiling at you, you're not sure if it is fake, if it is um so it's just the whole mix up for me. How did I or what did I do about it? Like you said, I think I had to come to the realization that there was a difference and I was struggling. um I was really, really struggling at the time, and speaking to people about this really helped me to understand why this was the case. And I think that has helped trying to find like-minded people that were on that same journey of trying of understanding the changes that were going on. Had really helped me at that time. But it's different when it's just you trying to figure it out, and when you have a child on board. I think there are two different scenarios, because you have to think about it for yourself and you have to think about it for the child as well. So those were two extremes I was experiencing when I came as a student, and also when, I've become a mom and I have to think about the difference in culture and upbringing for myself and also my kids.
Okay, let's talk about children now, because I can imagine how we as adults felt coming into the country where we didn't have anyone. We had to like almost like start afresh, find people. And I know that we were able to do this because, and I know there are people that are adults that are actually still struggling to do this. There are adults that have been here for years. They haven't actually found that community. They haven't actually found like that friendship group that would help them through. Um, Thinking about that, let's come on to children. How do you think that would even be for kids, right? If we as adults struggled this much. I think for me, one of the things I was going to say is that from observation, parents tend to focus on the initial happiness, like I said earlier, of moving to the abroad. And even the children get really excited about
Yeah, they
going to the abroad
do.
as
They
well.
do.
But the thing is that by the time they get here, I find out that a lot of parents completely forget about integration, completely forget about integration for the kids. Now, what they tend to do, or what most people would probably do, which is the kind of autopilot thing, is okay, let's get school for the kids, let's get them to start going to a particular kind of school. Maybe they do their research, or maybe they don't do their research. Let's get them to maybe church. By the time they fix all of these things, it's almost like, okay, we've done the things that we need to do. But the question is, are these kids actually settled? Now that brings me on to, what are the signs that you think, now using ourselves as example, what are the signs that you think parents should look out for when a child is actually struggling to settle into a new country?
Well, this is a very, very, very key question, and I would speak from my own experience with my own daughter, because Japa is a form of is a life changing experience, and children have different kinds of life changing experiences. So, one of the key things that I know, like, or I notice with my daughter, and I believe with other children as well, is aggression. When they start hitting unnecessarily, when they start throwing tantrums, when they start, biting, just doing things that normally they didn't used to do before, or becoming more irritated. So something that used to be a point of laughter before, you touch them, you play with them, they are crying. From I'm part of the TIP, the intentional parent, that is led by Coach Wendy, and one of the things she spoke about, and it made me really think deeply, is when your child is crying and throwing tantrums, sometimes they are trying to communicate something, which is probably like, I've had a bad day or something happened in school. And because they don't know the words to use to articulate it, what they do is that they start throwing tantrums, they start shouting, they are like no, screaming. So aggression is one thing that I always look out for when I, do big life changes. Another thing is they start going backwards in their milestones. So things that they used to do very easily before, or some milestones that they had crossed, you see them start receding. Maybe they are failing in their schoolwork. They are the child that was very, very bright before is now having issues with school. That's one thing you should look out for. Like my daughter at the time was maybe 2 or 3 when we had like a big life change. We moved house. I was having another baby. It was a big, big change for her. So just like Japa is for most children, it's a big life change. So aggression is one first thing I've said. Second thing is also their milestones. At a particular age, there are some things that they are meant to be doing, or they have even, exceeded. and you see them struggling with it again, it means that, there's something beyond, the ordinary, something beyond, what we are seeing naturally, that there's a reason why they're acting that way. Other things I would also say is when they become very withdrawn, like maybe if there's a child that's used to be very outgoing, a chatterbox, very lively, very playful, all of a sudden they are like one word answers, they're not as lively or as happy as they used to be before. I think it's one thing that, we parents could sit down and say, okay, how is this child really taking this thing that is going on? Is there something that is wrong somewhere that we need to look into? Um, then another key one that I notice is because, to be honest, our kids are very different from the kids here, and they are minority in terms of um population or count. So some schools you may see like three black children in the entire year. So when you start noticing kids trying to making comments about their hair, making comments about their skin, or just trying to blend in so much, it means that there are things they are struggling with internally, and they are just finding an avenue, a way to like communicate that. But as always, they're not able to articulate it, to parents. And if we are not looking deeply as what is going on, we may really miss out on the bigger picture.
You know, while you were talking, I just thought about cultural identity. Um, even for me as adults coming into a country where, okay, so you speak your dialect at home in Nigeria before moving to a country. You move into a country, you can't even find anybody that speaks your dialect or understands your dialect. The same thing, children at that age move into a country, and if you're some parents who decides to speak English at home instead of their dialect, which is fine if that's what you want to do, the kids are speaking English at school, and in the little dialects that they learnt in Nigeria, they completely lose it. And now, when they lose it, it gets to a point where they begin to ask themselves, "Who am I? I don't really know what my roots are. I don't get it. I don't understand." There's this confusion that I see, especially for teenagers. It's almost like they are copying stuff. And this is one big thing that I see when it comes to identity crisis for kids, especially the teenagers, is that they just start copying. Everybody wants to tie a headscarf. Everybody wants to do braids. Everybody wants to wear trousers and their Nike pants is showing. Everybody wants to wear a particular kind of trainers. Everybody wants to speak a certain way. Everybody wants to use a certain slang. And you find out that these are kids that were, when they want to send you messages, before they would send a proper full-on message, you understand. Now they can't even spell properly anymore. They are so confused. Now that massive change from a child or a teenager who was respectful, who was not, when I mean respectful, I don't mean when a child begins to ask questions, because that's one thing that this country does to children. They begin to ask like important questions. So that's not what I'm talking about. When they begin to question things that it's almost like a fundamental thing for your family, your values, the things that you stand
Values.
by, then you know that there's an issue. Now, when it comes to cultural identity crisis, what do you think parents should be doing to stamp that identity, to make sure that they have that identity ingrained in their kids from where they are coming from, and even when they move to the whichever part of the world they want to move? What do you think parents should be doing? Because it's something I've seen a lot, and I've seen so many children just, I, your heart will just break when you see kids that were a different kid, and all of a sudden they entirely become a different kid. And if you look at what's happening, for example, in the UK, where you see teenagers 13, 14 carrying knives, doing all sorts, it just breaks your heart as well, because you ask yourself, what is a 12-year-old, what's a 13-year-old doing with a knife? They should be in school. But this is a problem that we've seen. So what do you think parents should be doing in terms of helping their kids have a solid identity?
Um, I think where I'll start with is creating a strong sense of belonging. a strong sense of belonging, first of all, within the family. With teenagers, I mean, with or without Japa, they struggle with that season anyways. So Japa even makes it, difficult because it's a new environment. And when they reach, that age, many of them have been pulled out of their schools or their friends back in Nigeria, and you are putting them in an environment where they have to start finding new friends, creating a community. So at that moment, they are looking to belong to anything, to anybody, to any squad, to any cool thing. They are just looking for where to belong. And I think it's something that should really start within the family, giving them a strong sense of belonging, like, oh, you are loved in this family, you are part of us, doing things that make them feel like they are part of something that is bigger than themselves. It may be through family traditions, it could be through like family rituals, like something you do every week. So creating that kind of connection with the children to just make sure that they don't feel like I'm alone in this world. Because the moment anybody begins to feel like that, teenagers, children, adults, you're at risk to join anything, you're at risk to do anything. So it is very, very essential. Then another thing I also think can help is teaching the children the language. Um, as little as it may be, it does something to the kids. It makes them feel like I'm from something I'm part of something that is different from what exactly is going on here. I might speak English, I may go to my school, I may do things with other people, but there is something that ties me back to my roots. So teaching them their language is also something that would help. I know I'm way behind in this, and I only just started, but it does make them feel like they have a sense of identity. It does make them feel like they have a sense of identity. The last thing I would say, of course not the least, is spiritual, like their spiritual identity is also something that needs to be firmed up. Because irrespective of culture, because they can be here today, next tomorrow they move to a different place. If there isn't any strong spiritual sense of identity, then they are prone to keep struggling with that whole idea of identity. Who am I? What am I? Where do I belong? So those are the three main things I would really consider: language, sense of belonging, and also spiritual identity.
Yeah, just to add something to that, this is not talking about the social aspect, kids making friends. Um, People would say, "Oh, actually, kids make friends easily anyway, so it's not a problem." Now that's true. As much as that's true, there's also the role of the parents in helping their kids make friends in a new environment. Now, one of the things that I think is very important is when you find yourself in a new environment, it's finding a community as fast as possible. And the one easy and simplest way that one can find that community is if you're a Christian, you find a church. Okay, when
True.
you find a church, that church will definitely have people that have the same age range of your kids. If you find yourself in a church that they are all old people, then I'll probably say that may not be the right place for you and for your kids,
Mm,
because you want to have a place where your kids will have that sense of belonging. And now when you find a church and that place have a good kids children department, teenage department, where they have um that that thing where they put kids first. Because what I mean put kids first is that some places I've seen focus on the adult section and not as much on the children section. But when you find a place where they focus as well on the adult and at the kids
and the
section as well,
kids.
that's a very good place that you can start with. Now, one thing that's very intentional that I would suggest people in this category can do is you make friends that these friends have similar age range, similar kids of your, what's the right word, similar age range of their kids,
Bracket,
so
yeah.
age bracket for to your kids, and intentionally invite them to your house. you
Yeah,
know
fan
this
the
is very
relationship.
strategic, right? Invite them to your house, speak to them. And one thing that is even more profound, OJ, is that the group of people you meet when you come to the UK, the first group of people you meet
They
is
decide
so key,
everything.
is so important. Like literally can either make you or
Make
break
or
you.
marry.
Honestly, it's that important. So find a good community, church, invite people to your house, to invite people to your family, make friends, intentionally invite those children to your house for play dates, and just watch them, see if they align with your values, and just bring them together. Before you know, your child will probably have someone that they speak to, which is very, very important.
Yeah.
So
I
it's not just we as adults making friends in church. We can actually help our kids to make friends in church. Are you going to add something, OJ?
Yeah, I said that that's very important. It's not a Nigerian thing to do, or we are used to. Do you see me with any friends? I don't have any friend, and it's a mindset that we need to put aside, especially for the what's the word, for the benefit of our kids. My daughter is not necessarily the first person to go and make friends with people. Like she won't be forward, but the moment she warms up to you, she would fall in love. So on my own part, I try as much as possible to support her, to teach her, okay, if I see her playing with somebody, I go up to the person's parent. I try and align, okay, do we have the same values? I try and foster that relationship and fan it into flames. I may not necessarily be the one to start the relationship, but if I see that she has gravitated towards someone, I try and make that conscious effort to help her, keep that relationship, especially if those people align with our values. And now that you spoke about values, I think it's something that, as families needs to be decided before making any big movement, because it's almost like your foundation, is almost like what your children will gravitate to wherever they are. So that's something that should really, really be considered.
Yeah. Japa is a blessing. Japa can also be the biggest problem of your life if it's not managed properly, if it's not handled properly. There was a news that was shared recently where a lady who moved to the UK with her children, four children, all kids were taken off her and she's in prison at the moment. No, actually they were not taken off her. That's not true. So she stepped out to get something from the shop, and by the time she got back, the house went on, there was fire, and all four of her kids died. I saw that news, I think it was last week I saw that news, and it did break my heart so much so, because if you look at it, that woman was probably going to just get something at the nearest shop, right? They said they were at Tesco, one of those shops, and maybe it's something she had always done, and nothing happened. Now you've moved to the UK with four children, you've lost all four of your kids, and guess what? You're in prison. How bad can that be? That is the worst thing that can happen to anybody, So, based on this, I was going to talk about parenting. Now, parenting in the UK, the dynamics of parenting in the UK and parenting, let's use Nigeria because we're both Nigerians, and parenting in Nigeria. I know a lot of people know the differences. You're not meant to beat, you're not meant to smack, you're not meant to do this, you're not meant to do that. What are the things that you think that people don't even know about, but they do it, that parents should be aware of?
Hmm. Of course, the general one, which is no beating, no hitting. Um, what I think comes to mind that people shouldn't do that they're not aware of. Can't really think of anything over the top of my head, but definitely places like Scotland, smacking is not allowed. In the UK, in England, I don't think they've put any laws or any restrictions like that. Leaving your children, I think there's an age range within what you cannot leave. Maybe you have a 12-year-old and you leave your 12-year-old with a 5-year-old. To you as a Nigerian, that child is responsible, but the law does not consider that child old enough to look after the younger one. So it's not necessarily something that should be done. Also, there's a particular age with which your child is not allowed to go out by themselves or use transport system all by themselves. So those are the main ones that come to mind for me.
Do you know what this? I know you've talked about leaving your kids at home. You've talked about smacking, because that's actually the big one. There's
Yeah.
an area of negligence that parents um, parents don't actually look into as much. Negligence in the sense that your child is sick, you give your child the malaria medicine you came with from Nigeria. or your child is sick, you say, okay, don't worry, let's manage, let's not do anything, let's leave it. Or your child, because in Nigeria your child is so responsible, and your child should be able to make certain kind of things at that age. You come to the UK, you know that there's certain things your child cannot do. Your 7-year old in Nigeria may be able to make pounded yam for you and eat, that's fine. But UK, if anything happens to that child, in fact, if anything goes wrong, you are the first suspect.
Yeah,
That's just the
true.
truth of the matter. If anything goes wrong at home, you're the first suspect. So any form of negligence, leaving your children at home to go and buy something at the closest shop, leaving your children at home to or just doing things that you know is wrong, please don't do it.
Yeah.
One thing that
Even
you want to do is come to the UK and lose your children to the system. You're going to say something, OJ?
yeah, even repeated lateness to school.
Absolutely.
They did say that if your child keeps coming late to school, Nigerians we form African time is something that all of us are still working on. But if your child consistently comes late, they're going to hand you over to like social services to interrogate or check why this is the case. Even going to school with unexplained injuries on their bodies is still something that would need to you need to answer for it. So I think in the UK, not like they are doing this to target parents. I wouldn't say that, but there's a high level of responsibility, being that you are accountable to someone. In Nigeria, you are the owner of the child. In Nigeria, you can do anything you want that you deem fit, for your kids. But here, there is a standard, law of how children should be treated, what should and should not be done. So moving moving over to the UK or jackpying with children requires you understanding what these things are. And there's a whole debate about how these things are wrong and they are spoiling children and all the things that are being said concerning it. But at the very end of the day, you don't want to go against it and be the one on the news. So I feel like that's the same way we are looking at, the visa application, understanding what needs to be done, where are we moving to. I feel the same energy should be put into this place that I'm living in. What are the regulations here? Because ignorance is not even an excuse in the court of law. So it's
Absolutely.
something that we should, because even for me there were so many things I didn't know, so many things, and I've been here for a while. So doing that research is very important. It's very important.
Yeah. Thank you so so much for that. I'm just gonna read a couple of comments. Prince said, these are the kind of conversation that can drive policy change." Absolutely, it's so important because I feel like the way before you become a British citizen, right? You should have what's it called? You should be able to do some exams, right? Before you're able
Yeah.
to write the exams. Now read, study, read, and all of that. Write the exams and also pass, right? Then you now get your indefinite leave to remain. The same way, I think that people who are coming to not just the UK, any country should be able to go through the laws of the country. If you're a parent, there should be a certain part of kind of course that you should do. If you're coming for a particular thing, there's certain another thing that's even so important and heartbreaking for me is when you look at the level of crime and knife crime in the world right now. When you think about it, these are children who don't have a role model. These are children who their parents are actually working so hard, that the kids come back home, they don't find anybody at home. So the kids are literally parenting themselves. It was on the news this week that even did you know that women are carrying knives now more than even boys? It was strange to hear that. And these are all coming from a place of kids are scared that they don't know if somebody's going to attack them or not attack them. So when you're coming to the UK, or for us that are coming to the UK or coming to other parts of the world, we have to structure our work so much so that our kids are not neglected. you know if we're going to work so much, so a lot of people say, oh, I came to this country because of my children. Is that actually true if you think about it? Are we spending as much time as we're supposed to spend with these children? Are we there for these kids to talk to us the way they're supposed to talk to us? Have you removed that mentality of, oh, kids asking us questions? Because I know it's one of the problems that we have with that from Nigeria. We don't like to be asked why. And that's one thing that the children who move here would learn. The first thing they will learn is how to question things. They will question you and question you to the point that you have to gain knowledge to be able to answer those questions. So, what am I saying? Why we come to the UK, get ourselves, we're coming for our children, we want to have a lot of money, we want them to have good educational system, education, we want them to have a good life, a good future, and all of that. It starts from the foundation. If we're going to be on work permit and we're working, that the kids come back home and they don't see us, who is raising the kids? Is the next door neighbor, the children out there, the touts, the people who are doing drugs, the people who are in gangs, the people who are just out there as well looking for one place or the other to plant their identity. Those are the people that will be raising our kids. So, OG, what role do you think fathers now, because I just want us to go into the different aspects of
Dynamic.
parenting. What role do you think fathers need to play when it comes to their children moving abroad and having that true identity? What role do you think fathers need to play?
As fathers, I believe that they play an instrumental role when it comes to leadership. It's almost like having a boat and there's no captain, or having a ship and there's no captain to say this is the course we are steering the ship. So fathers have that role of providing leadership, providing covering, providing a vision on where exactly are we going in this family. I feel like fathers also have that responsibility of being able to, absorb what is going on within the new environment and trickling it down to their kids in a way that they can understand, in a way that is, quite relatable to them. So it's not just providing money in the way we see it in Nigeria. The father will just drop a huge check at home. But in the UK, it happens in such a way that the money is not just enough. In as much as the mother is there tending to the kids, the presence of the father, especially for boys, is more than needed, if there's any word like that. Because when fathers are there, they serve as role models, for them. And in their absence, the boys don't just, you know they just look for another role model. So I think fathers play that role of giving leadership, of modeling the boys. And also for the ladies as well, the fathers are also needed to be that sense of security, that sense of I can go to my father to speak to him about anything that I'm going through, any questions that I have. So I think it's a very, very essential. It's not something that can be negotiated, or something that I would say, okay, I will provide in this way financially, and then the woman will do every other thing. I believe that fathers are more needed in this day and age, more than any other time in history.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go on a very quick break. When we get back, we will talk about more of scenario kind of conversation, ask like proper real life question in a scenario way, and see if that would help a lot of people who are trying to move to the any part of the world. We're using UK now because this is where I and OG live, and we know one or two things about it. But obviously, whatever thing we share with you, that will give you an idea on how to go about whichever country that you are moving into. I know that the laws are not completely way off. They are one or two linked together. So we're gonna go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll move into that aspect of that conversation. Just hold on. Right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We're going to be going into the other part of the conversation, and I would before I do that, I would like to tell you about our next show, which is going to be coming up at the end of the month. Now, we've talked about Japa today, what you need to bear in mind from our experiences, but we also want to talk about what you need to do in terms of your health. So when you move to the UK, you have to register obviously with the GP, which is the doctor, and there are certain things that you need to do when you move to the UK. Um, Also, most people say that, oh, I can't get hold of my GP. I don't know how to go about it. So we're going to be having an expert, a GP, who is going to be coming on the show to tell us how to deal with your GP, how to get the best out of your GP, the kind of questions you should be asking your GP, and all of those kind of things. You don't want to miss it because it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful experience. Knowledge is beautiful. Knowledge is something that you should have to enable you get the best results. So I'm going to bring OG back on the call. OG, let's say I'm your friend and I'm in Nigeria right now, and I call you and say, OG, you know what? I think I'm going to be moving to the UK in September with my children. I don't even know where to start right now. I don't know what to do. Please, can you give me an idea how to prepare myself as a woman now, just a woman, not the man, and how to prepare my kids before I move to the UK? Well, how would you answer this friend, OG?
Hmm. Interesting. I think I believe in my response to this person, the first thing I really want to understand is why exactly are you moving?
Mm,
Because when I understand the purpose for which you are moving and your mindset, it'll be easier to advise that kind of person. If you're someone that is all about, like most people, I'm frustrated, I'm tired of Nigeria, I just want to move anywhere, anywhere, even if it's, that kind of person would need like the whole mind overhaul. But one of the first ways I'll say you can prepare yourself and also your kids is, talking to them about it. Um, s- People feel like, oh, I don't want to tell my children, they may go tell other people. But I feel it's very essential to talk to your children about it, to start getting them used to the idea so that there isn't a huge shock or transition when they move. So it gives them time to deal with it. Secondly, I feel you need to communicate with them, like all the things we said here about have you really read what is required when you are going to that new place that you're going to? Have you checked what is needed for the children, how they behave, and almost start living like that and wherever you are right now. So if you're thinking of moving to the UK now, hitting, beating, spanking, all those things are not necessarily allowed here. So it's almost like beginning to wean off those bad, habits or those things that we've come to say is the only way of raising a child that is not acceptable in the new place that you're going to. Secondly, as well, I feel beginning to build connection with the children, activities to build the bond, bring the children together so that you are fostering a relationship that you can hold on to when you move to that new area. Because with movement is a big life change, like I said earlier, and it's going to put a strain to all relationships with children, with parents, with spouses. So it's essential that building connection with the children starts, before you move to that new area or that new environment. Um, the other thing I believe that I would advise my friend that is moving is begin to understand your children and the differences between them and the uniqueness of each child, knowing how each child will react to changes, knowing which child will struggle a lot more, and then start proactively, doing things about it. Like for me personally, I have a daughter who one of my kids doesn't really do well with changes. So ahead of time, I have to do a lot of like going ahead, setting the pace, doing so much hard work before I get to the actual change. So if you have a child like that, you need to understand the uniqueness of that child. Um, Another thing I'll also tell this friend is seeing where they are in their academics, knowing their strengths and also their weaknesses, so that if there's any change, when they move to the new environment, you'll be able to pick it up, know their area of strengths, know their area of weaknesses, understand how the child learns. Because if they move to a different place and they start having issues with their academics, it may not necessarily be because they are dull or there's something wrong. It may be their learning style. So try and understand the learning style for each child. How easy is it for the child to adapt, and what changes can be made? So those are some of the key things that I would say that, the this my friend, should consider before moving. Yeah.
Thank you so so much for that. Yeah. So, like Oji said, do your homework, do your due diligence. Don't just
Yeah, that's
focus on
real.
applying for visa and applying for anything that's going to bring you here. Do It's even more important to do your due diligence. Where you stay is very important. Now, don't it's so important. Where you stay is very important. I don't know how to explain this, but where you stay, your environment is very important. If you live in an area where um in the evenings you just see people doing drugs, it's going to be easier for a teenage child to fall into
We get
that.
into that fast,
if
yeah.
you if you live in an area where the schools are not good, they're not competitive, it might affect your children as well when they move to that, when they go to the schools there. Because one thing that about life is competition helps, but when your child is always the first, the best. And the thing about UK system is that it's not about the best, the first. They look at everything. I think on this show, I'm going to be bringing someone as well at some point to talk about the educational system in the UK, because this is where we are, to explain how it is. Another thing as well is that this double promotion that we have in Nigeria, it doesn't work, because I have seen a lot of people who come to the UK and their kids are in JSS 3 and they come to the UK, they put them back in year 5. So when I mean year 5, primary 5, it's so important because
Wow.
when it comes to school, it's about your age. It's not about how intelligent you are.
How
It's
brilliant you
about
are,
the
yeah.
age of the child, because it has affected a lot of our people moving to the UK a lot, and it's still happening. Double promotion does not work in the UK. If your child is supposed to be in year 5, they will be in year 5. If you double promote them and bring them to the UK, the system will send them back to where they're supposed to be. In fact, you can't even fight it, because that's the way
Mm.
it works. So that's very, very important. Another thing I was going to talk about as well is the health aspect, immunizations, and all of that. It's your responsibility for your child to be immunized. If you say that the immunization or the vaccine is not okay, then it's fine for you to opt out. That's absolutely fine. But you also have to be responsible for whatever consequence that comes with that. Um, so I think these are the things that they are not just just a few things that we've shared, but obviously it's your responsibility. Like Oju said, ignorance is not an excuse. If something happens to you and they say, "Oh, what? Why? I didn't know," it's not, it's not an excuse at all. It's not going to help in any shape or form. So learn about the country, learn about the environment, learn about their laws, learn about their rules. No cutting corners. Like guys, no cutting corners. Do things the right way, so that when you're driving on the road, you see a blue light behind you, your mind is not going to jump and say, "Oh, what are they coming to what are they coming to do?" Do your due diligence. I think
Mm.
for me, right, I was going to ask about children, and I know I've talked about school, but children and school. So when I mean children and school, when you find yourself in a school where your child is always the best, the best, the best, how can you support that child? Because it's difficult for you to move that child to a different school. The thing about schools here as well is that it's dependent on where you live. The schools around you is most likely the school that you're going to take your kids. So when you find yourself or your child is in a class where they are not very, there's no competition, this is what I would suggest that we should do. The first thing you want to do is that you tell the teacher that your child needs more challenge, right? Your teacher or the teacher of that child would be able to provide additional tasks for that child. That would help that child to be challenged at school. Another thing you can do is to come back home and provide extra things like people do,
Appreciation.
like Kumon, like explore. There are so many things that people do here. But what you don't want to do is to go and become angry with the teacher and tell the teacher you're not teaching well, become, they always like to label us aggressive in some ways. So we don't want to give the opportunity where somebody's going to label your child aggressive. So do one or either a combination of all of those for your child. And if you think that your child is not getting what they need, there's nothing wrong moving from where you are to a different location. And this is why, even before you put your child in that school, you have to read the Ofsted report. You have to look at what the school is all about. Because if you
Yeah.
don't, and you find your child in that school and something begins to happen, you should have known anyway. And reviews as well. There are so many websites online that you can go and read reviews about school. And you get honest feedback. It's not just people just putting stuff there to make it up, but
Yeah.
honest feedback. So these are the things that you can do. Oji, is there anything you want to add to this conversation that is a big, like a passion for you that you really want parents and people that are going to be japaing, people that have already japaed, people that are already on the plane as we speak right now to know? It's something that's been on your mind that you want to really share with this group of people.
I think one one thing that is really, really key in my heart is that you can only parent from a place of from the place of the knowledge that you have. You can't do more than that. And if you don't increase your knowledge capacity, especially moving to a new area, you'll be doing your children a disadvantage. And this is not just something that is only peculiar to people in Japan, but it is very, very essential because it's something that is easy to deprioritize, seek knowledge, and be open to unlearn some kind of things. If your mindset about parenting and children, and if it doesn't change, there is, no matter the amount of money you are making or the good life that we feel like we want for our children, we'll be doing them a disservice. So changing that mindset about parenting and also trying to gain knowledge. One other thing that I would say to wrap up is also find the right community of people that are positive, that have this positive mindset, towards, Japan, people who are on learning and learning. Be part of a community that can really help you to stay abreast with what is going on, especially with your children's age range. Don't suffer in silence. You may have, children or teenagers that may be struggling with exactly the same thing. Open up and say, "Oh, please, how did you solve this issue? Um, my child is struggling." Because most times, as Nigerians, because we are Nigerians, there's this thing about hiding it because of shame. If I put my own out there, people are going to say this or say that. But at the end of the day, I've noticed that everybody is probably struggling with the same thing.
Absolutely.
So be able to speak up about it. And very lastly is more about, don't discipline the children from a place of shame. Try and get to the bottom of why are they doing this thing that they are doing. Very, very recent example that happened to me. My daughter went to school and she went with some chewing gum in her pocket that she took from the bonnet, from the car actually. And then she got and told me, "Oh, this is what happened." And I really heard her out, like, okay, what happened? Because in that moment, the normal me would have been like, how can you embarrass me like this? What kind of rubbish is that? How dare you? How dare you? But I really had to calm down and ask her, what happened? Why did you do this? And she told me that she feels like if she doesn't take interesting things to school, then her friends will not want to play with her. And I was very happy that I had that conversation because it gave me the opportunity to see what the real problem was. So this is just one of many examples, and it's not something that is very, very peculiar to some of us from Nigeria, the way we think about parenting. But if you really want to help your child, we have to go beyond the surface level of what they are doing and what they are saying and go for the why. Why is this child behaving like this? Why is this child throwing a tantrum? Why is this child not doing well in school? Go for the why. Because when you go for the why, you're able to connect with the child and you're able to solve the real problem.
Thank you
So
so
yeah,
much. That is
that's it for me.
That is such a very valid point. He has actually answered the question I was going to ask you. If a child is struggling, what should the child do, or what should the parent do? But if you've answered that question, I think there's something on the comment section which I'm going to address. But before I address that, I want to say that as parents, right? It's like Oji said, we need to come to a place to understand that nobody knows it all. That's number one. Everybody has one thing or the other they are struggling with. When it comes to parenting in this country, it is not the same. If you're moving to the UK, to the US, Canada, Australia, wherever you want to go to, and you want to maintain the style of parenting that your parents used on you, I can just tell you without even prophesying that you're going to fail, because it is not working. It's not going to work. It will not work because the generation of children that we are raising is completely different. They are so intelligent. They are so smart. They have a lot of information at the tip of your finger. So you have to have
Yeah.
knowledge, not information. You have to have knowledge, and that makes you a different parent. One thing I was going to add is that one of the things I've observed, this is including me as well, is that when we move to a new country, we don't integrate. We are still finding our Nigerian people.
Mm,
All our friends are
true.
Nigerians. At work, we are looking for Nigerians. At anywhere on the bus, we are sighting a black, looking for a black person. On the train, we are looking for a black person. It is not supposed to be so. Now, don't get me wrong. It's important for us to have our community, our people, people of color, people like us that can understand us. But at the same time, to be able to understand how it's amazing when you work with these people. You hear how their culture, their tradition, their way of life, it's completely different. It's not the same. I remember a story where someone moved to the UK, and we as Nigerian, we are givers. We give. We can go to a place. We'll give them. Have you eaten? You can even buy something for your boss.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't do that because it's going to be like, why are you giving it to me? Because I don't know what the intention
yeah,
of this
true.
thing is, and they become very suspicious of it. So that's one aspect. Let's try to integrate. Let's try to mix up with other people, not just the people from the country, even our other African countries as well. People from other African countries, we mix up with them, learn about their culture, learn about their tradition, because we are raising children here. They can come back and bring. There's a likelihood that our children may not even marry our Nigerian people. So if that happens, what happens? So that means our heart is completely broken. So it's something that we really need to bear in mind. Um, Dayo said something. He said sometimes the Ofsted, I'll just put it on the screen, say sometimes the Ofsted report is outdated. Yes, that's true. Let me address this. Now, if you go to a school, or you want to get a school for your children, and the school is excellent, although they've changed it now. If you're following the way
Okay.
things are going, they've changed it now, so they no longer do outstanding, good,
Outstanding.
need improvements. They've changed it for some reasons that things happen and they change it. But prior to that time, if you're sending your child to a school that is outstanding, please look at that outstanding properly. In fact, look at when that outstanding was given, because one of the things they do is that when the school is given outstanding, Ofsted doesn't go back to that school immediately like Ofsted will do to other schools. So that means that outstanding has been there for 6, 7, 8 years, and you think, oh, it's outstanding. And because they know Ofsted is not coming back immediately, they will likely relax. In fact, if you look at it, the school that you should be targeting is the school that needs improvements. As much as it
You're doing
sounds
a good
bad,
job.
but they are working hard to make sure that they get to the standard of good and outstanding. Now, I'm not saying that you should send your children to school that needs improvement. Obviously, they need help. That's why they need improvement. But what I'm saying is that outstanding doesn't really count as much. It might be outdated.
Yeah,
That's the truth of the matter. And
yeah.
this is personal experience as well, where we sent our kids to a school that is outstanding. Not less than a year, Ofsted visited that school and they went down to needs improvement. and I was heartbroken because in my mind I've done my research and I've done all of that. And this is not just if other,
Mm,
I'm sure other parents as well will be able to account to this. So if you're looking for
mm,
school for your kids, there are more important things that you should focus on. And this is why I need to bring someone who is a trained teacher in this country to come and
all of
teach us
this.
what to look out for when it comes to, even when you're reading the
Mm,
Ofsted reports, there are certain things that you should focus on, not just the good. The good could be good in one particular area, but will not be good in another area. So if you want your child to be good at reading, it might the school may not be very good there, but they may be good at numeracy, like
yeah.
maths and all of that. So there are so many nuances that one needs to look at when it comes to picking school. Say, I need a boy. I need a boy child. Any tips, please? Okay, this is someone from my
Needs a
YouTube.
what?
Needs a boy. Any tip? This is someone from my YouTube channel. Okay, don't worry. I think I'm going to on my own just come up and answer questions around trying to conceive a boy or trying to conceive a girl. But one tip I will give you because you've asked is that make sure you understand your body and make sure you know when you're ovulating. And I think I'm going to end it there because this is not a conversation for today. But thank you anyway for asking that question. OG, any last words at all for our people?
Yeah, my last word is it's a good thing. Japa isn't a bad thing that will cause fear. It's possible it can be done. And good luck with the whole intention, with everything that's going to be done. It's not only daunting for us parents, but could also be daunting for our children. And I just believe that with the knowledge you would get, you would have what it takes to ride it through. Yeah, so that's my own final words.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much. I'm going to address two things as my final was. The first one is mental health in children, mental health issue in children. I know we didn't mention this, but I can tell you for free that a lot of kids are struggling with their mental health. Okay, and this is not to say because those of us that are from Nigeria be like,
Of mental health.
what is that? You know. Now this is real. It's something that is absolutely real that we shouldn't joke with. People struggle with mental health. We as adults, the country is so busy, the country is so packed with a lot of things that
Yeah.
children get so stressed out, get so on top of the identity crisis they're having, and on top of the relocation thing they've done, on top of every other thing, their school, their exams, their all of that, they struggle. So if your child is having issues with their mental health and they open up to you to say, Mom, I'm not feeling well, or Daddy, I'm not feeling it, I feel like I'm not motivated, please don't shush them. Please listen to them. Give them the help they need, the support they need. You could speak to your GP about it, you could speak to their teacher about it, and they will give them the help that they need. Support your child. The level of kids doing things that are not nice to themselves, it's really, really gone high.
Lot.
And I want us to, as parents, to be very proactive and not to be reactive. The second aspect I want to talk about, I want to speak to all my men. You know, I love men. In fact, I was saying to my husband the other day, I always have a man. I love men, I respect men, I honor men. But if you're a man and you're moving to UK, for example, there are certain things that you need to unlearn, and there are certain things that you need to learn. There are certain things that you need to drop off as you want to enter the plane, just leave it by the airport. And there are certain things that you, when you come here, you embrace it. Number one is you have to, now, I'm not saying you should drop your pride, but you will drop it a little bit. Because if you're coming to this place, you and your partner are working as a team. It's no longer I'm hungry and your wife will be in the kitchen. Now, the way it works here as well is that it's very difficult for one person to be the sole provider of the home. Both the wife and the man would likely be working, so it has to be a joint partnership. You're not bringing 50%, your wife is not bringing 50%, both of you are bringing 100 and 100. And if you even
Mhm.
have more than 100, you bring it. Because if this is one of the reasons why marriages are struggling, when people move from Nigeria to the UK, it thinks, oh, it's going to be an amazing time with us. But the issue you didn't fix in Nigeria, you come to the UK, it's going to be amplified. So please
Yeah.
support. partner, support your children, be present in their life, be present in your family. Don't be an absent father. Don't be working from home but nobody knows. I was listening to something this morning and the guy said that most men don't even know the date of birth of their children, and it's true. Don't be one of those men that you're working from home but genuinely you're not home. You can't actually support as much. So, but my prayer for all of us that are here and the ones that are going to be coming is that God gives us wisdom and God helps us, that the Japa will not be a curse, but it's actually going to be a blessing for us in the long run. But we have a work to do, have a job to do. If we don't do that job, then it might likely be something that we'll regret. Most people who live in London, down south, when their kids starts getting to that age of being teenagers, they just move them to different parts of the
Yeah,
UK.
he moved to the north. Yeah.
Yeah, they just move to the north because why not? Um, yeah, we have the same hairdo. We are friends anyway, so that's why. So yeah, so I really want to thank you guys for joining. I really want to appreciate all of you. OG, I really want to say thank you so much for the amazing conversation that we've had. I know that people would come back to play and watch the replay. People would also even when you watch the replay, if you have any comments at all, sorry, any questions at all, you can drop in the comment section. I would answer, OG would answer. If you have any direct questions for myself or for OG, please message us. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, I'm on YouTube as well. So, but you can message me directly on Facebook, message OG on Facebook. If you're following me as well, you would see that I've been adding and tagging her in all of the posts. If you're on YouTube, you've not subscribed to this channel, please do. You would
Right.
do us a big favor. If you're on Facebook, you're not following us, please follow us and God will bless you. Thank you so much for an amazing evening, OJ. You know I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Love
so
you
much.
too.
Yeah. All right, this is where we'll call it a day and we will speak to you in 2 weeks when we'll have our GP on the show. Have an amazing evening. Bye everyone.
Bye bye.